All right, everybody. Give me 1 second. Lost internet connection and my video timed out. Let me just make sure we're live. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. All right, so I was in the middle of talking about writing interventions and saying that you need someone to be the eyes and the ears. So that's how I would think about writing. And I also would encourage people to not get too, um, not be not be too worried about getting your students to complete an assignment in your session. Your session should be more about building the skills that are going to help your students complete the assignment. So the assignment itself, the writing task itself, is kind of the end goal. But what you really want to accomplish with your students is, can they, again, think about the macro or micro level things, like do they have those syntactic structures that are going to be able to support the writing? Do they have the vocabulary to be able to put those sentences together? So that's if you're working on those micro level goals. If you're working on the bigger structural things, can your students figure out how to get ready for writing? Can they engage in the self-talk and the organization and the thinking into the future about what they need to be doing in order to write, or what the end product might look like? Can they do the planning and the note taking and the outlining? So all of those types of things. And then going through the writing process, do they know how to self-evaluate when they're doing the writing? Do they know how to review their writing and after they've done it? And again, self-regulated strategy development gives you some of these tools to help work through this, and you can layer that into some of these more micro level strategies that we're talking about in language therapy advanced foundation. So again, the goal is to work on those strategies. Yes, you maybe want to finish an end product, but the whole point of doing writing in school is so that you can learn those skills, so that you can do them in life, in your job, in, when you're filling out a job application, or when you're filling out a questionnaire for your medical history, when you're summing things up. And I mean, a lot of jobs require you to do written summaries, even ones that aren't academic and technical. So again, always be thinking about it from the standpoint of, what skills do I need to build so that my students can write, not just like the end goal of the output of writing, which of course we still, don't want to forget about that. That's important as well. You still want to be mindful of IEP goals about, like, whatever the writing standards are as well. It's just that we want to layer in the other things, like what are the skills that are going to get you to that goal as well, so we can kind of address it from both angles. Something that I think is really important to talk about when it comes to writing is things like work refusal, because I know that a lot of times, you might have those students who you're working on writing in your session, and it's just a huge, like, it's a huge headache for everybody in the classroom, because it's very stressful for students, because the planning and getting ready is so overwhelming for them. And sometimes the teacher might not be aware, is this a language issue? Like, are they not understanding the complex syntax and not processing because of those types of reasons? Or is it that they don't know how to get started and get organized? Or is it both of those things? Is it just that they're refusing, and does it get dubbed like a behavior issue? So there can be a lot going on there. And executive functioning and language issues are very often the culprit behind writing. So, what can you do for work refusal? So, the best way you can support teachers with work refusal is that if you have something that is a strategy that you've done in your smaller sessions, that is, you want to think about that as kind of a like your sessions as sort of a pilot for strategies that you might be able to share with other people. So obviously our sessions serve a specific purpose. Like, we have treatment goals that we want to work on, but also with a lot of these language skills that we might be working on, you all know, like, you can't clone yourselves and be in a million places. So we've got to figure out how to both make the most of those therapy sessions, but also figure out how we might be able to take some of the things that we're working on in therapy, kind of work out the kinks on our own in that smaller group, and then maybe share it with some other people as well. So with things like work refusal, some things that you can start to try in your sessions that maybe you could then share with some of your colleagues. Um, I know that my go-to strategy was super basic when I was in the schools, which was just like, if you do your work and speech, you get your sticker. That was not very effective. And the reason it was not very effective is because a lot of the kids just didn't care. The sticker didn't mean anything to them. Um, there might have been a few that were super excited about it, but a lot of times the sticker was so abstract and it's like a real reward maybe happened later on like and so the sticker charts were either not meaningful to them or maybe they were kind of considered like a token to earn something else that was way further down the line that was outside of their time horizon. And so because it wasn't immediate, the not wanting to do the activity in the moment always outweighed the, oh, you might lose your sticker. So that didn't work very well. I don't recommend doing something like a sticker chart um, unless you're using a sticker as like a data point to show like work completion. Like, I mean, if you have some kind of a like, let's keep track of how many days got your assignments completed or something like that, where you're like looking at a calendar and checking off days and like seeing something a little bit more tangible where they can see units of time, and maybe the stickers are just kind of like a data point within that calendar. That could be something that maybe could be useful. I know that um, I can think of, oh gosh, like I'm trying to think of an example. Like, I even know adults who are like, okay, I have a certain goal. Like, I want to do something like so many days this week. And they'll like put a little check on their calendar, like every day they accomplish their goal. And maybe they write down what it is. So, like, if it's a data point like that, sometimes that can be useful. Again, if you kind of layer in the the rewards or like the sticker on top of something that shows time, sometimes it can be a little bit more useful. But only if you're using something that's behavior chart kind of thing, the only way that that could possibly be meaningful is if kids have the ability to like take that symbol and make it mean something. Like, it has to be meaningful and they have to be able to think far enough into the future for them to be like, I get so many of these, tokens, and then I get to do my fun activity or whatever it is. If your kids, don't have that within their time horizon, then it's not likely to be very successful. So, what do you do instead? And I actually recommend this strategy for a lot of kids who are working through things that are very difficult. Like, I kind of do this on my own sometimes if I have a clock in front of me, still, even though I have a pretty good sense of time. So, how do you work on that work refusal within an activity? What I do, instead of a sticker chart, or instead of verbal reminders of like, we've got 5 minutes left, or if you don't do X, then you're going to miss out on the treat at the end, or whatever it is. Instead of doing it verbally, I try to make it more visual. So when you're working through that activity, you take a clock and you just like shade out the different parts on the clock and say, like, for this 10 minutes, we're doing this activity. For this 10 minutes, we're doing this activity. And then you have that clock available to them while they're doing all the different activities, so that they can get a sense of those blocks of time and they can see the visual. And a lot of times you might not necessarily have to repeat yourself. You might just have to say, like, oh, are maybe we can look at the clock and see what it's time for, and just kind of directing their attention over there, and just repeat and repeat and repeat, and use that clock to kind of show this like cause and effect between their behaviors, rather than something super abstract to them, which is like, again, a lot of verbal reminders, a lot of prompting, and things like that. Or again, abstract rewards, which don't often work that well. So you can use the clock, and I highly recommend that whenever you're doing something that requires complex planning, and you have to think about how long is this going to take, especially with something like a writing assignment. That's going to be really important, because a lot of kids really struggle with planning when they've got those big assignments, figuring out, like, if you've got a high school student and it's like, I've got this 30-minute study hall, what can I get done here? Well, you can use that clock strategy to say, like, here's the activity that we have to do. Here's how much time we have. Let's like think about the time and just block out how we might plan all of these things. So that could be something that's really useful for, I mean, it could be useful in elementary school, but especially for high school students because they've got to figure out, with all those blocks of time within their day, whether it's their study hall or their free period, or maybe they've got like 40 minutes to do high school or homework before they go to their extracurriculars or whatever it is. They have to be able to think about looking at those blocks of time and thinking about how might I get through this homework assignment or this writing task? How might I plan and get ready? And how might I think about how long this is going to take as I do it? So I would recommend that whenever you do any of those writing strategies that I mentioned, that you use that clock and just kind of shade in all of those different things and walk through the different steps in the process and then use the clock, encourage them to be looking at the clock during those activities. So that's how I would address the work refusal. It's not going to be a magical overnight thing, but if your students are refusing work because of just feeling super overwhelmed with the planning or inflating something in their head and making it seem like it's going to take way longer than it needs to, or maybe not giving themselves enough time to do their assignments and going completely in the other direction, this will over time help them to get over some of those things. And you might even, instead of being like, let's say that you've got like a 10-minute like activity that's kind of fun at the end. Well, like if if they've procrastinated and not gotten started with their work because they were arguing or refusing, well, that is a consequence that, well, now we don't have as much time to do the thing that you want to do. So you always want to frame it like, well, we've got to get our work done before we do those other fun things, and the consequence of not getting started and delaying that and is that we don't have as much time to do those things that you want to do, and again, with some kind of a visual that's showing the time. So sometimes that's a little bit more tangible than just kind of an arbitrary, like, we're going to do this and then we're going to do that, or more like, I don't know, some people, I mean, not that you intend to do it this way, but it comes across like a threat, like, well, like, if you don't do this, I'm going to take away this. You want to frame it more like it's a privilege. Like, it's a privilege to be able to have free time because we get all of our work done. That's more of a like reinforcing a natural consequence of getting your work done. And what you're doing there is that sometimes the students struggle to think far enough into the future that they are going to like be aware of the actual natural consequence of not getting a homework assignment done. You might need to create a situation where there's something more immediate. And a lot of times people are hesitant to do that because they think, oh, well, natural consequences are better. Well, yes, they are. But if the natural consequence is going to happen way far in advance and it's, again, too far out of the student's time horizon, then what you might want to do is just, again, create kind of a scaffolded situation where you're mimicking that same concept of we get our work done and we get to, like, you earn the privilege of being able to do the things that you want to do and have more time to do the fun things when you get your work done first. So that's kind of how we want to frame it. Like, it's, again, this privilege that we continually get to earn because that is life. That is truly how something, how life works, is that we want to get our work done first, and that allows us to earn free time and other things like that. So it's not a full-blown, like, when you think about natural consequence, like, you are doing something to change the situation, like you're having an impact on the structure of situation, but that's just scaffolding. So sometimes we do have to create that scaffolding, so giving the visuals, giving the modeling of the strategies and gradually fading it out, and then also kind of creating those scenarios where maybe there is a consequence, again, not framed like a threat, like you're going to lose this if you don't do, whatever it is, but like, if you do this, then that's going to result in this outcome over here, which is, you going to get more time. So that is one way that you can start to phrase it a little bit differently, rather than using, common, like my go-to strategy, which was a behavior chart, which often didn't work very well, except for, I mean, honestly, the only kids that were excited about the behavior chart were the kids that didn't like came in and, weren't weren't showing things like work refusal anyways. So they just were excited about everything. So I didn't necessarily need to use any kind of scaffolding strategy for them for that specific purpose. So those are some things that that you can start to think about when it comes to writing. So I know that this video started abruptly because my internet went out. So I'm going to just link this video below part 1 so that you can see the whole thing. As always, I come in here about once a month and answer some questions. You are welcome to respond to, hit reply to some of my emails that are the notifications for members. And then also you're welcome to start a thread in here and ask me a question. As always, if I don't respond to you within 48 hours in this Facebook group, feel free to tag me. It means that it might have just gotten bumped down in my news feed and I may have missed it. So you're welcome to tag me if I don't respond right away and if you haven't initially tagged me. So thanks everybody, and I will see you next month.